Hello and welcome to the Twisting Wires podcast. I'm your host Joel Curtis. I'm an aspiring professional cricketer and have a passion for the mental side of sport, fitness and personal development. I'll be decoding the mindset, practices and routines of these high-performing people to help you reach your potential.
If you're wanting to be the best athlete you possibly can be, you need a coach that is going to help you with workouts, to build strength, prevent injuries, become stronger, more powerful, and any goal you have, what you should be eating as well to perform at your best. Well, I am the solution for you. If you are interested in optimizing your performance and getting coached by me, send me a direct message on Instagram at JoelCurtisPT to find out more. Today on the show, we are joined by professional cricketer Beau Webster. He's had a successful career playing for Tasmania since 2014. He's played Big Bash for the Hobart Hurricanes and the Melbourne Renegades, and also has represented Australia A. We discussed some great topics about how he doesn't like to overthink the game, how his game is developed with Big Bash cricket and red ball cricket, and much more on the mental side of his batting and dealing with setbacks. There is a lot of great advice in this episode for everyone, so I hope you enjoy the chat, and be sure to follow Beau on Instagram at bwebster93 and his gym at Team Fit Training. And remember, please do us a favour and like, share and subscribe to the podcast to help support the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Twisting Wires podcast. We're joined by Beau Webster today. Thanks for coming on the show.
No worries, glad to be here.
Cool. Looking forward to today's chat. So, obviously, you've been up in Darwin the last few months. What do you love about Darwin, and can you tell us about what you're doing up here?
Yeah, well, obviously, being from Tasmania in the colder months, it's really nice to get to Darwin. Not only play cricket, but also get outside and enjoy the sunshine. It's sure we can agree with Joel. The weather's pretty unreal up here for this time of the year, and especially being from Tassie. Like I said, lots of cold indoor training sessions and things like that. So I just love whenever I can be able to get up here and get outside and do what I do outside compared to being pretty limited down home with the indoor sessions.
Yeah, and obviously I met you through the gym, and what sort of your goals been in the gym the last few months? I've seen you've been doing quite a lot of beef weights.
Absolutely, it's we sort of have about 12 weeks off every season, and this year I sort of decided to try and put on a bit of size. In that 12 weeks, it can be quite hard to try and do some muscle building exercise during the season when you're bowling and batting and fielding, and a lot of running sessions. So it's quite a nice time of the year to sort of nail down an 8 to 12 week period where you can only lift weights and just lift as much as you want, really, because you're not worried about being sore for trainings and getting through game days too much. So yeah, I used the 12 weeks this year in the off season to try and come up here and put some size on. I think I came up at about 94, 95 kilo, and I got out to about 103, 104. So obviously got some fat to burn off there in the next couple of weeks, but I think it's definitely worked. I've got a lot stronger in pretty much all the areas I wanted to. It's going to be a bit of a tougher sort of 6 to 8 weeks now before I get back home to try and burn some of the fat I put on, but definitely in terms of size, ticked off some goals, which is really nice, and I found it relatively easy up here with the weather and the freedom of time to sort of get into the gym when I need to or when I want to, as opposed to a bit of a strict schedule back home when I'm training.
Yeah, awesome, man. What does that do do you reckon that helps with your batting? Do you think like that's a new way of sort of like with obviously T20 and stuff? Do you think being like bigger and being able to like muscle sixes is going to help?
Yeah, 100%. I came to Darwin in 2019 and sort of had the same goal really to try and put on a bit of size, but I think 2 years ago I wasn't as well educated in it. I probably didn't eat enough in terms of putting on actual size. I went to the gym a lot and did a lot of exercise, but I wasn't really seeing too much progress in some of the strength areas I wanted to. And this time I sort of did a bit more research around it, some calorie intakes and how many sessions and different splits I wanted to do in the training week. And definitely think, personally for myself, being someone who's quite tall, got long levers with the bat, any sort of muscle I can get on I think is an advantage. And definitely the way my career is going, I've sort of slid down the order a bit for Tasmania as a bit of a hitter role at 6 and 7. I'm bowling a lot more now, and in T20s as well. I'm sort of a middle order player that you sort of can't give yourself too many balls in a lot of situations. So to be able to, like you said, muscle a couple of balls over the boundary if you don't quite get them out of the sweet spots, an advantage. And I definitely feel a lot more confident knowing I've done the work in the gym, as opposed to sort of just, running every day or whatnot and being a really elite runner or explosive off the mark. I think strength's a really key part of my game, just with the way my career's headed and where I want to go from here.
Yeah, and can you give us an insight onto what you're eating in a day and like how many calories you're having?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the fun part. When I first got here, I had a target of about probably 3,400 to 3,700 calories a day, which I thought wasn't going to be. I've never really done that sort of many. I haven't really been a really diet focused trainer. I've also I don't eat poorly, but I don't eat really well as well. I'm sort of one of those guys in the mid-range who eat really well during the week and then maybe have a blowout every weekend sort of thing. But this time, I had the calorie counted for a lot of the weeks. And like I said, it seemed quite easy at the start. And then as you get into it, it can be a lot of times when you're eating when you're not hungry. We always have a joke, me and my housemate Chamber, that we don't eat for taste, we eat for gains when we're sitting there eating rice at 11 o'clock in the morning or another meal at 9 o'clock at night or something like that. But it can take some getting used to. But yeah, I was targeting about 3,000, probably roughly about 3,600 a day just to try and put on a bit of a calorie surplus. But when you're eating that much, it's sort of a bit more motivation to go to the gym because you don't want to eat that much and not do anything. You just feel really poor about yourself. Yeah. So it was also another motivating factor, being like, well, I've eaten this much today, I've got to do a session, otherwise it's pointless. So that was a good little motivation there. But it's changed now in the last couple of weeks, definitely. Yeah,
cool. And so take us back to a bit about your childhood growing up in Tasmania. What was that like? What did cricket look like for you growing up?
Yeah, I was a pretty typical athlete, I think. I grew up in a sporting family. My brother played football and cricket. My dad was a big footballer. He loved his football, and my whole family, cousins, everybody all played around the same area. So I was, like anyone, I suppose, down in Tasmania, played cricket in the summer and football in the winter, right up until I was about 18 when I got my first rookie contract. I remember I was on a TAC Cup trip with the Tassie under-18s playing football against, I think it might have been Vic Country, and got the call after the game. I had a stinky game, was feeling pretty flat about myself, and then got a call from the guys at cricket saying I'd been awarded a 2-year rookie contract and basically took it straight away. I always felt like I was a much better cricketer than footballer. As much to my dad's disappointment, he'd much rather me go down the football path. But it looked like that in the early parts. I was always cricket focused in the summer and footy focused in the winter, right up until I had to make the choice, pretty much.
Yeah, so obviously you're obviously really tall, so that would have been a massive advantage in footy. So what made you want to choose cricket over footy? Like, because were you close to getting drafted at all?
I like to tell everyone I was. It's just one of the typical stories down in Tassie where you could have got drafted if you wanted to. But I probably played 7 games of football in the TAC Cup. Had 1 or 2 good games. Had a couple of meetings with some AFL clubs, but I don't think anything would have come of it. So I definitely picked the right career, I think. But yeah, I was more than happy. I think it was a bit of a natural progression. I sort of started playing a lot of junior cricket with Tasmania in the under-19s, 17s and 15s, right through, and had some really good performances. So you could sort of see a pathway there developing in the cricket, whereas football's, it's a bit more unknown with the draft and whatnot happens there. But I was more than happy to take the contract and pursue a career in cricket from then on. Yeah,
absolutely. And what was it like getting the rookie contract? Were you surprised at all, or did you sort of expect it? How's the feelings around that?
It's always a little bit of a surprise or excitement. I had feels like I had a bit of a pathway mapped out. I've been represented Tasmania as one of the smaller states. Our depth gets quite tested in the underage carnivals. So I played a lot of under-19 carnivals when I was 15, 16, 17. So I played a lot, and I could sort of see a natural progression in there, and you always have people talking in the ear like, oh, you get a score here, you get a score there, you pretty much sealed a contract or what it is here, but you never actually know until you get the call or what someone's feeling. So I remember getting the call to this day, and like I said, I was in Melbourne on the way back, and Michael Farrell rang me, who was the state talent manager at the time, and said, you've got a 2-year rookie contract. I think it's only worth about 16 and 18 grand a year at the time, so it wasn't exactly rolling to the bank, but I was pretty happy to take it and I sort of quietly confident that I could get myself onto the full list. Already started playing a bit of second 11 cricket at that time and had a few decent performances, so quietly confident I could put a few more scores on the board in grade cricket and second 11 and get onto the full list and push for some first class cricket.
Yeah, and how do you find like the step up to the first class and like the environment at training? Because there would have been like Ricky Ponting and
yeah, absolutely. Had like I said, I had Ricky Ponting in my first year. He was around our setup, which was quite amazing actually. Everyone was sort of in a little bit of awe of him. Come down and had the Tigers kit on and the hat. You only really see him in the baggy and the white. So that was an experience in itself. But watch how he went about his training. Not just him, some other guys around the group as well. Obviously, I had Tim Payne was in pretty much peak when I first started before he had the finger trouble. So he was obviously really, and always has been to this day, a really big trainer, hard trainer. And you learn pretty quickly that if you don't, step up to the mark, you're going to get left behind, especially when these guys who are older are still putting in the hard yards for 10, 12, 15 years. You need to sort of get with the program pretty quick, otherwise you're going to get found out. I had a couple of different coaches early on. I started with Tim Coyle for my first couple of years, who was very old school. They'd just come off winning the Sheffield Shield my first year, which was amazing. I thought, this is unbelievable. We've got a Shield winning side, and it's going to be hard to crack into, but like I said, quietly confident in myself that I could put some performances on the board. And then obviously Coyley retired and we had Dan Marshall, went through a real lean trot of winning games, and that's probably when I debuted in and amongst some pretty dark times for Tasmania there, where we couldn't win too many games and our list was constantly changing, and we were searching for a lot of answers. But it was an experience in itself and made me a better cricketer today, definitely.
Yeah, and what were some like little habits that you had to change from obviously underage cricket, and especially for kids now that are pursuing like those goals of playing high cricket?
Firstly, probably from a technical point of view, you get found out pretty quickly if you've got a weakness in first class cricket, as you can get away with it in sort of first grade and even to an extent second 11 cricket. I think there's so much footage around these days that once you start playing a bit of cricket, they know the bowlers catch on pretty quick where you don't want the ball to be as a batsman. And I found out that straight away. I had a massive LBW issue early on, being tall, falling across the crease, had balance issues and all that sort of thing. So, I had some excess early, and then you get brought back to the pack pretty quickly when they figure out where to bowl. I think it was the biggest ever. I scored back-to-back hundreds. I think my 6th and 7th game, or 7th and 8th game, I think it might have been, and was on top of the world. I thought, this is like great. The wickets are flat. This is great. I'm in good form. And then the season ended after a pretty good year for me, and then came back the next year and found out pretty quickly that the bowlers obviously watched a lot of footage and worked out where to bowl to me, and went through, like I said, a real LBW stage of the ball coming straight at the stumps, which I managed to get through at an underage level by defending and whatnot, but I was always a stronger player when the ball was wider or shorter, and then I got found out pretty quickly and got drawn back to the pack pretty fast after that. So from a technical point of view, that sort of thing, to work with the coaches and that, to try and, how you're going to come up with a plan, where they're going to bowl to you, and then how you're going to capitalise on not just getting out but actually scoring runs. So it's definitely taken a few years to get around. That's still probably the weakest part of my game, but we've got some things in place that help me get through those sort of spells and stuff. But yeah, I think the biggest step up is just no matter how good you probably think you are or whatever, there's always going to be people that know where to bowl to you or can expose a weakness pretty quickly with the quality of bowlers going around first class cricket. And some of the wickets these days are quite tough to bat on, so especially Bellerive down home. So it's it can be a wake up call pretty quick.
Yeah. So what sort of mental strategies do you have to use to get through those tough times, stepping up? Yeah,
I think everyone's different in terms of their mental preparation. I'm a big one on being relaxed at the crease. I don't like to go into the game with lots of pressure on myself, or I don't like going to the game saying, I've hit 1,000 balls yesterday, I should get runs today, or I should get a little bit of luck today because I've been hitting lots of balls or I've been running hard or whatever it is. I don't really like to feel like that. I sort of like to go the opposite way and just be relaxed mentally at the crease. I sort of get the work done early in the week, maybe have a top-up session the day before that, and get into a really good headspace to think, my game's in order. I know what I've been working on, whether it's that pre-season or the past 12 or 18 months, what I've been working on. I sort of go into the game confident that's going to get me through, and then just worry about the ball and what it's doing. I don't like to think too much about technique or whatever it is when I'm at the crease. I just like to be comfortable. I like, as I mentioned before, about balance issues. I've got some things in place, but keeping my head upright. And I think if my head is upright, everything else flows. And your hands sort of go where your head goes, and your feet sort of go where your head goes. So as long as your head's in a good position, I'll back everything else to follow. In technical sense, I suppose. But so my whole game based around that is just mentally make sure your head's okay, and that's pretty much it. And then just have a clear mind about what the ball's going to do. Don't try and think too much what the ball's going to do. Just play it as you see it, and back, like I said, back the work that you've done and in the past 12, 18 months to get you through.
Yeah, that's really good insight. And obviously with Big Bash, you made your debut reasonably young as well. How did your T20 batting develop? Were you always like a six hitter when you were younger, or how did you develop your T20 batting? Yeah,
no, I definitely wasn't a six hitter when I was younger. I was probably a skinny, tall kid. Didn't use the pace a lot down the third man and off my hip, and I had a pull shot. Pretty much was it. Other than that, I had to develop some stuff to be able to score. Had, like I said before, had a few coaches during the Big Bash that have all given some really good insight. Started at the Hurricanes with Damien Wright and Simon Helmut coaching, and debuted at number 7 with the bat, which can be one or two ways. You're either coming in the last 1 or 2 overs, you're either not coming in at all, or you're coming in when the team's in some real trouble. And that was what was happening in my first hit out. I think I came in with 5 for 20 inside the power play. And ended up getting 70 off 40 balls with Johnny Wells, got a few as well, one of your mates. So we ended up putting on about 160 on the ball, and that was my first hit in the Big Bash. And up until then, I didn't really have any clear plan. I probably had a slog over cow corner as a boundary option. And I sort of just learned sort of on the run a little bit. But faced a lot of spin. It was Adelaide Oval, short square of the wicket. So I said, there's no way I'm going to be able to hit a 6 down the ground here at Adelaide, so I've got to look square of the wicket. So I started sweeping, started stepping across and just going where I thought I'd be able to hit a 6. And luckily it paid off. And since then, I've just done a lot of work on middle order batting. I'm obviously probably not going to bat at the top in any franchises. There's so many good players around. I feel like my role in the team is sort of a 4, 5 or 6 role now, and it can be interesting sort of watching players go about, different players, how they go about in the middle order, and I'm sort of one who, I'd like to give myself a couple of balls if I can, 5 or 10 balls if I can, and then try and get on with it. I'm a much better player at pace and spin, so if I get a matchup I like in the 12th or 13th over, I'm probably going to go a lot harder than if I get a spin matchup in the 15th over, for say, because I back myself to hit the quicks much more than the spin. So that sort of thing in my game is what I work on, and now I'm just trying to develop some strategies around facing these spinners to try and either get off strike if I'm batting with a really strong player of spin like a Shaun Marsh, or someone who really dominates these leg spinners, or if I'm not batting with someone, then I've got to find a way to find a boundary. Working on a lot of sweep shots and things like that. So it's developed a lot. I think my weakness in the Big Bash is obviously spin play. It's no secret, and now I've just got to come up with some strategies, because a lot of the boys now, as soon as I come in the middle order, there's just that 2 spinners to either end, so you can't just sit on waiting for the quicks. You've got to find a way to score, and that's sort of how I've developed, and it's still developing, and I'm getting better at it every time. So it's still a long way to go, but I like the challenge.
Yeah, constantly learning. That's awesome. And so with those game plans, would you think about them before the game of like what bowlers and like sort of the dimension of the ground and what sort of the way you want to play those spinners, and how do you set that up at training and like more game situation scenarios and things like that?
I think I just work closely with some of the senior guys. I've done a lot of work with Matty Wade and for Tassie in some spin stuff and some spin scenarios. Ben McDermott's quite a nice player of spin as well. There's some good tips that they give you there when you're batting in the middle order. But I don't go into the game plan with. I go into a game with, I'm going to hit this bloke here or hit this bloke here. Like I said, it's sort of a situational thing where you might have, for instance, the point's really far. He's gone around to extra cover. They've got 1 point, opens up for a reverse sweep. That sort of thing. It might be the deep square is well in front, so you can hard sweep, or there's no one at mid-wicket, so take the calculated risk to try and get one over there. But I definitely don't go into the game with set plans. I sort of like to get into the contest and see what happens on the fly a little bit in that sense. But yeah, I definitely don't go in there with any preconceived ideas. So I think if you do, you're on a bit of a hiding to nothing. You try and pressure on yourself if you stack a couple of dots and you think this is the bloke I should be getting, or this is who I need to get through, and he's making me look like a fool. It's just a bit more, too much pressure on yourself, I think.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And I know you mentioned before that you like to be like relaxed and switched off like before a game. And was that always the case like when you were younger? Or how has that developed since you've been older?
Yeah, definitely not. It's something I've probably learnt more in the last 2 to 3 years, I think. I used to be I was like probably most bad is you go to the bed the night before and you think about who you're facing and what they're going to do with the ball, and is the wicket green or flat, or what spinner's doing what with the ball. It can be a bit of a mental battle, but and early on in my career I was no different. I'd hit balls for hours before, the day before, to try and feel good, or whatever you kind of, you get in the right space or whatever it is. And it works for some people, like we've seen with Marnus and Steve. They hit thousands of balls and that's their method, and that's what they like to do. And then you go back to someone else, like a Matthew Wade, who doesn't like to hit a lot of balls the day before a game, or whatever it is. So everyone's different, and I've sort of switched over to the less balls or less physical prep, more mental prep before a game, just getting in the right headspace the day before. I like to be relaxed the night before. I don't want to be sitting in my hotel room shadow batting about what the bowler's going to do. I'd rather go out and enjoy some of the boys' company at dinner, or go into someone else's room, play some PlayStation or something like that, just to get into the right headspace. Because, I don't like to feel like I'm putting too much pressure on myself at night, or even in game. You're 10, 20 not out overnight, and you think you should be going on with it in the morning. I sort of like to switch off once the game's done, and then get back into it sort of an hour before the day starts.
Yeah, that's great insight. And so do you have any like rituals the night before a game, or like what about before the game? How do you prepare for that?
No rituals. It'll be like I said. We obviously travel a lot around Australia, so it's quite nice to get out and go to a nice pub or a nice restaurant the night before and have a nice feed with the boys. Everyone, we've got quite a good group in Tassie that are all pretty similar now as well. We like to relax and get in the right space before a game. So we'll drop our bags off, and if we got training that night or the next morning, it'll be definitely after that. Like, right, we're heading out for dinner here if anyone's keen, and get in the right headspace. And majority of people will come. Some people don't like. Some people like to watch some footage the night before or whatever it may be. So there's definitely no judgment there or anything like that. It's just what you want to do. But no rituals for me. I like to relax the night before, and then day of the game, I'll hit a couple of balls, probably get there early. If we start at 10:30, I'll probably get at 8:30, hit for half an hour straight away, and then sort of just potter around, a few coffees, a few toasties before we start, depending on what we're doing. It's quite nice now when we're in the toss and bat, and I'm batting at 6 or 7. I can put the feet up for the first session, which is nice. But not too many rituals for me at all. Just hit a few balls the day before, hit a few balls in the morning, and make sure I'm right to go mentally for what's ahead. Yeah,
I like that simple approach. That's really good. And how about routines? Have you done any work like on building routines? Because obviously that's quite important as a batter.
In terms of before you're facing the ball, or
like
ball by ball routines.
Yeah.
A little. I've experimented a lot. I've had I suppose you could call it quite an inconsistent career, where I've scored a lot of runs and then had a lot of lean patches, and then out of the blue I get 100 and then don't get any for another couple of weeks. It's kind of been a bit of an inconsistent. A lot of people said, "What's your routine?" or how do you go into this game feeling great every time, or and I've experimented a lot trying to do the same thing. I think if they just come naturally a little bit, rather than sort of telling myself, tap the bat 3 times and look around the field and then watch the ball, it sort of comes naturally. And what I've found naturally is actually, I don't consciously do a routine, but I actually am doing the same thing every ball when you watch the footage back. And it's not anything huge. It's basically make sure my head is as level as I can get it when the bowler's in their approach, and that's pretty much the only thing. However I feel like I have to do that, I'll do that. Whether that's some days I like to have my stance a bit wider, so I feel like I can get my lower centre of gravity to get my head more level, or whether I feel like I need to lean forward more to get my head more at the ball or more level with the bowler, whatever that may be on the day. Just do it and accept that every day it's going to feel different. Some days the bat's going to feel like it's really open in my hand. Some days it's going to feel like my front foot's closed off. But at the end of the day, whatever my head's doing, I feel like the rest of my body will eventually catch up. And, whatever you need to do to get through that first initial 10, 15, 20 ball period before you start feeling good at the crease and before it all starts to come naturally, just to not try and fight it and let it happen. And like I said, my head position for me is key. Being a 6'7" batsman, it's very easy to fall over the offside and cut across the ball and whatnot. But I found as soon as my head's level, the bat swing comes down on a better plane. I get a much better contact on the ball. My footwork is generally better because it's going in the right direction with your head. So that all my routine is literally telling myself is to get my head level. That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Simple again. That's great. And what about switching off in between balls?
Yeah, no, so I'm always going to walk away. I sort of, scratch middle a lot and then I walk away and have a chat to my partner or walk to square leg. But and like I said before, I don't do it consciously. But then you look back at the footage and every single time if I face quite a few balls in a row, it's always walk to square leg and then walk back like pretty much the same distance every time. And I don't feel like I do it. It just happens naturally. It might be a bit of nerves or a bit of nervous energy, but when you look back at the footage, it's constant going between there and square leg and something, and that's a routine, isn't it? I don't consciously do it, but it's just what happens. So, in between balls, it's just keep watching the ball basically.
Yeah, simple again. I really like that, and I think a lot of people do overcomplicate it, especially with everything out there these days with psychology and
absolutely,
and the different theories, but. So how do you go transitioning between like formats in between Big Bash and red ball cricket? Do you change your technique at all, or?
Not really change my technique too much. I think I'm also. I don't think I change my technique too much. Sometimes my biggest change would probably be a little bit of my grip on the bat. I think it's sort of one thing I learned from. Batting with some other guys like Dan Christian down the order, he's very big on grip changing, which was something I sort of thought, well, you just hold the bat and swing, and that's how you swing it. But I learned a few years ago, a lot of the times when he's quite open with his blade, and I sort of said to him why are you so open? And he explained it to me, and it's just like a glass shattered in front of my eyes when you're batting at the depth. And I sort of thought I need to give that a try and see what it's like, because at the moment you have those moments where no matter how hard you swing, you just can't make good contact on the ball, or they've got a plan to, and you can't seem to utilise a ball behind or something like that. So he just basically explained it very simply. He sort of opens the blade because he reckons he can cover more percentage of the ground with the open blade. For instance, if he's very open and he gets across to the leg side and anything sort of length and above with the open blades, and you don't have to swing up on it. It's a natural swing because of the angle of the blade. The ball's going to go up. And then vice versa, if they go full because of the open blade, you can hit the ball sort of hard through point, or we've seen him doing the Big Bash, hit the 6 over mid-off and cover. So I sort of thought I'll give it a try, and felt like an absolute goose for the first couple of sessions trying to hit with this open blade. I was chunking everything or missing it, and then I sort of fiddled around with it a little bit, and then it was sort of like a breakthrough moment where sort of 15 overs, or as the more I got into my innings, the more I sort of opened up my grip towards the back end and felt like I could access a lot more of the ground. And it was actually, it was like I've never been able to hit sixes sort of on the offside, and then just because of the grip change and keeping the same swing, amazing how much contact you can get on the ball to sort of hit sixes over cover or sixes over point, but still have that cow corner shot that we're all accustomed to from juniors, just slogging across the line. So that's probably the only thing. Whereas in red ball cricket, I've probably closed it a little bit back up because the ball goes in the air a lot. When you're pulling, it's always going to go in the air. When you're cutting, the ball sort of goes at a catchable height. So it's one thing in the red ball cricket, I sort of close it back up a little bit, unless I'm batting with the tail and I'm trying to tee off again in the later parts of the innings. But I just found it after a few sessions of doing it with him and sticking at it for a few weeks. I hit the ball a lot harder. I don't know whether it was just I always had a really closed off grip and I couldn't get that pure contact on the ball. But when I found out I opened my grip up a lot more, I just found the ball was just hitting the bat much harder and coming off much better. So I just sort of one thing I stick with, and sort of if T20 cricket from the start of the innings to the finish of the innings, it'll probably slightly open up every time because I just want, when I'm going harder, I want that open grip.
Yeah, that's really good insight. And how do you sort of, in red ball, are you thinking like, all right, I'm just going to play straight and leave early, and in terms, how does that mindset shift in between?
It's very situational. It can be different. Like I said, I've been batting at sort of 6 and 7 the last couple of years, and being one of the players who's got the onus to try and either get us out of a rut if we're 5 for 100, or if we're or if we're 5 for 300, my sort of game plan doesn't really change too much in terms of I want to be trying to put pressure back on the bowlers. And I found the way to do that was anything sort of wide of off stump. I'm quite strong from about gully through to mid off around, and instead of having the negative mindset of they're going to try and nick you off with 3 slips, I sort of thought if I get out nicking off trying to play a cover drive, that's my game plan. If I'm trying to smack one down the ground off the stumps, not my game plan. That's when the good and bad outs come into it. And it's been very, very successful with Jeff Vaughan. Sort of, he was our head coach at Tassie, and he's really big on the good and bad outs. And we sort of look at the end of the day's play, and we can be like, yeah, we've had some really bad outs. Bo, you're not very strong down the ground, and you've just been bold trying to hit one, trying to hit Scotty Boland back past him, and that's a really big cross. Whereas if I get out trying to play a cut shot or a drive on a ball that's wide of the stumps, almost regardless of length, that's a good out for me. And then it flips around vice versa for other people if they're really strong down the ground. And they get out playing a shot like a cover drive, it might be a bad out for them. So that's really good clarity around my role for Tasmania. And I found it at the crease, it was from ball 1 too. If I get a ball in my area, I'm going to hit it. And I know I've got the backing of the captain in Wadey and the coach. That's my game plan, and that's where that's how they want me to play and how I want to play my game. So there's lots of little wins and losses in it when you're batting, I suppose. And if you can simplify it a little bit to my game plan is if it's on the stumps, try and keep it out, and if it's off the stumps, try and score. That's pretty simple for me, and I really like that clarity around the role, and had some success over the last couple of years doing it.
Yeah, that sounds like that's communicated really well. I think that's pretty important with the coach. And sort of how do you deal with the pressure and the negative thoughts? Obviously, a lot of batters they have to deal with these thoughts they get while they're batting, and you mentioned it before.
Yeah, it's a tough one, especially as a batter. Everyone's been through a lean trot and feel like the ball's the size of a pea coming down at you and you don't know what you're going to do with it. If it's moving around or whatever, I've certainly been there, and I'll still go there lots of times. It's just how you can try and simplify the game. And I think one of the good things about the setup I got down at Tassie with the coach and the captain and all the boys were very clear in our roles, and people are quick to tell you how you're batting, or everybody's quick to tell you, you're doing this wrong and that wrong. But if you can sort of block out the noise and sort of stick to your game plan, like I was speaking before about my role in the team and how I can best perform my role to get us in a good position in a game of cricket, I'm just going to stick with it. I might be out 3 or 4 times playing cover drives on the up, and there comes a point where there's a bit of accountability. You're not just playing reckless cover drives or anything outside off stump. There's a bit of accountability there. Is the length right or whatnot, or is it the right part of the game? But more often than not, that's my role, and I'm going to get out and I'm going to look like an idiot. We might be 5 for 100 and I play a huge cover drive on a length ball, and everybody around's going, what has Bo just done? That's a shock and shot. And then sort of you get back to the sheds and Jeff will come up to me straight away and be like, length wasn't there, but in your game plan's right, move on next time. That's just instantly think right. You're out of your own head. You just focus back on the game, and then you move on. So in terms of the negative thoughts, it's just finding a way to get back to your game plan. Wadey uses a very good phrase that when he was a youngster, he was chasing his ass, is what he says all the time. He was getting out one way and then going the nets and fixing that way, and then he'd go out and then get out another way, and then he'd go and work on that, and then his constant circle of trying to fix every weakness of what he was doing instead of just locking into one game plan and backing and accepting that you're going to have failures. But if you lock into the one game plan and you're consistent with it, you're going to have some success. And then if not, then you can look at the game plan as opposed to different aspects of it. So that's one thing that really resonated with me as well. I had a huge LBW issue and I'd fix that, and then I'd nick off for 6 weeks, and then I'd fix the nick off and I'd be back falling across myself. It's just a constant battle between trying to fix every little deficiency, whereas sometimes you've got to accept that, I'm not a very good player here, but what can I do to get through that to allow me to score in more other areas? So that was one thing that I learned quickly, I suppose, is that you're going to have lots of weaknesses, and it's not about fixing those weaknesses and making them your strength. It's almost about sometimes, if I try and fix this, it's going to open up another area of weakness. So how do I sort of balance the two to be able to stay at the crease, 1, and score 2? So definitely those two things are important, I think. It's about 100%.
Yeah, that's great detail, and I think, do you think that is sort of the main step up between Steve Smiths and first class cricket, like they're just so clear in their game plans?
Yeah, I think some of the game plans are evident. I think a lot of the batters these days, if you've watched a lot of cricket or you've been around cricket, you can watch someone bat for sort of half an hour, and you can get a pretty good feel of what he's trying to do. You know, we see Marnus and Steve and a lot of other batters these days bat on off stump now. They obviously want to bat on off stump because they want to leave the ball outside off stump, and then they want people to try and hit the stumps because they're extremely strong and probably hit 20, 30,000 hours in their hitting off their pad. So they know that if they bowl there, doesn't matter if it's hitting the stumps, I'm going to score off it. And if they want to keep bowling on the pads, I'm going to either keep scoring or they're not going to get me out. So that's one thing that you can see in the game plan. I think that's just so clear. You know, they go to the crease and they know what they're going to do. It's like, right, I'm batting off stump, anything outside my eyes, I'm leaving, anything in my pads, I'm hitting through the leg side. And that's as simple as that. And you can see it pretty evident. A lot of people down in Tassie sort of adopt the same plan because the wicket's quite difficult to bat on day 1 and 2. The ball seams around a lot. And if you go out there with no plan, I think you're on a bit of a hiding to nothing. So it's one thing we've implemented as a batting group down in Tassie is to have a really clear plan and stick to it. And then the plan can be different for everyone. You know, our openers like to get out and across the off stump to take out the LBW that nips down the line, which is probably the most dangerous ball at Bellerive. And then some of the lower order batters like to give themselves a bit more width that if they are hitting the stumps, they can still drive the ball through mid-off and down the ground or wide of cover. So it's different for everyone, but I think the planning or planning around your game or what you like to be known for as a cricketer or what you want to do on the day is crucial. Absolutely. I think, like I said before, if you just go out there with absolutely nothing, just you're in a bit of a hiding to nothing. So it is very evident when you watch some of these players when they bat. They know what they want to do. Whether it comes off or not is another thing, but at least they've got a plan and they stick to it. And then if the plan's not working, you can adjust the plan. But at least they've got something out there and that's going to hold them in good stead.
Yeah, absolutely. And heading into the last few questions, so you obviously mentioned a few mentors that you've had before. So what impact have they had on throughout your career? And has there been anyone else that has given you some great advice?
Yeah, I've had plenty. I think over the years, I got my first few years with the Tigers squad. I was really close with Alex Doolan. Still am really close to Alex Doolan. He's fantastic to talk about cricket and all things in life. Really, he's been a bit of a life mentor for me coming into the squad really young. He's got his head switched on Dools, and he always has. The perception around the country of Dools is very laid back and almost laconic, and sometimes he's been criticised for being a bit lazy, but that's just the way he is, and everybody knows he works hard. Dools, he's done now. He's put his feet up, retired now, but I still talk to him, 2-3 times a week about everything in life. But he's definitely one who's helped me sort of transition out of that, 18-year-old sort of not much planning, sort of just almost arrogant that you're going to go out and score runs to actually, you need to put some things in place to give yourself the best chance of scoring runs and getting picked in the team as well. So that's another thing in altogether. But he's been excellent for me right through when I was a bit of a young cowboy carrying on in Tassie. As you do when you get your first contract, and you're probably out a little bit too much or you're socialising a bit too much. And he's one that's really sort of brought me back to earth in a good way, especially in these last sort of 3 to 4 years, I'd say. In terms of all things cricket and life, he's been excellent for me. And then I suppose the other one is Wadey. Since he come back to Tassie, he's one of my good mates, and I regularly bounce ideas off him in all aspects. Again, I suppose he's been excellent, and especially cricket stuff. I feel like me and him have got a pretty similar mindset to the game in terms of simplicity and how we like to get ourselves ready for a game or what our plans are in the game. And he's very good for me if I'm getting in my own head too much about what I'm doing or what's happening in the team or where am I batting or who's bowling. He's very quick to give you some advice just to worry about what you can control, and everything else is just pointless energy. So he's been excellent for me. There's been lots when I've been growing up. I've had a couple of I thought Dan Marsh was excellent for me as well early. In those tough years, he was still good. And Richard Allenby was another one who was my junior coach right through from like 15s to 19s. He was, a very big part of my career, I suppose. So those four absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds like Jules has done a good job. And
Absolutely.
I think being growing yourself outside of cricket, I find is pretty important for myself as well. And sounds like you've done the same thing. And what's some of the highlights of your career that comes to mind, like a really good win or like individual innings that you enjoyed?
Yeah, there's a couple. I played, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I had a really good period there where I scored my first and second 100 really quickly, and I think I got another 80 the game after that as well. So I was in really good form, and then ended up that was in the last 5 Shield games of the year, so around March, and then ended up going on a holiday to Thailand or something like that at the end of the year, and got a call just before saying I'd been picked in Australia A as a 22-year-old or something like that, and playing against India in Brisbane. That I just remember that was like, I sort of thought I can see a path to Australia straight away, and albeit it got brought back to earth pretty quickly in the years to follow. But it was a real highlight where I thought it was a really glass-shattering moment where I thought I'm good enough to play at this level, and not just as a fluke or one-off, but in 3 or 4 different innings I've been good and dominated the bowling attack. So it was a really good personal moment to realise that you're good at this level, good enough at that level, and then end up getting a few runs in Australia for Australia A as well, which was a highlight in the early days against a good Indian attack that a lot of them are still playing Test cricket now. So it was a good test to know that where my game's at personally. And I've been sort of trying to get back to that level. I'm a completely different cricketer to then when I was 22 than I'm now at 27. So it's a lot of growth in there. But that was one moment that I was really proud of. And I suppose individual innings, I saw there was 2 years ago against WA at home with the juke balls. I had a bit of trouble with the juke ball early on there when we used them in the back half of the year, just with the sheer amount of swing and quality of the bowling around Australia. I found it quite tough, but I got 170 against WA off 170 balls, or 180 off 180 balls in the batting at 7, and that was sort of, I don't think I've ever played with any more freedom in my life. It was a bit of a, like I said earlier, I came in at number 7 and I think we were 5 for 120, in some trouble. I think we walked off. I think I got 100 in the session at one stage, and it was just like, it was one of those days where they're very, very rare as a batter where you're literally seeing the ball like a beach ball, and everything you're doing is working, whether it be a nick falls a metre short and goes for 4, or I got dropped on 99 or 98, I think, and then just one of those days where everything went right, and I can still just remember being at the crease. I was batting with Benny McDermott, and I think he was 4 or 5 off about 50 balls, and it just seemed like they were bowling like absolute geniuses to him, and every time I get on strike, I get a half volley or a catch shot or a pull shot or something. And I was just remember speaking to him. He's like, mate, I'm absolutely battling here. Creaming him like, what is going on? And I was like, I have no idea. But it was just, one of those days. And I still remember just like I've never batted with any more freedom than that. The wicket was coming on really nicely. I felt like it didn't really matter what the bowlers were doing. It was going to the boundary, which was a very euphoric feeling. And I don't think most batters get that when you get to 100 or whatever it is. But it was definitely one of the great days I've ever had, and I'm not sure I'll ever get back there again, but it was good while it lasted.
So do you still have aspirations of playing for Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone does. Everyone should, I think. It's like I said, you're a couple of good innings away from your name being thrown around in the local paper, and then all of a sudden you get a few more, and you talked about on websites and podcasts and things about should we play this guy or whatnot, but absolutely, I think if anyone who's playing first-class cricket can string a good season or 2 seasons together, you're not as far off as you think. So, 100%, I'd like to get there. I think my bowling's going to help as well with a bit of being able to be an option with the ball. So that's one thing I'm working really hard on at the moment, to try and become that sort of the batting all-rounder where, you can bat in the top 6, but you can also bowl 15 overs a day, which is valuable in any red ball side. In terms of white ball, absolutely, I think there's plenty of scope for players in the middle order of our white ball team to push to make their way in. We're seeing, I think they're playing at the moment, the Aussie boys in the T20, and we still haven't found that right combination in the middle order. So there's definitely some holes there, and if somebody can come out and have a really good couple of big bash games or overseas franchise games in the middle order, they're definitely going to get talked about for playing. So I don't think anyone's too far off, including myself, if you can string a few good performances together. Not far off at all. For anyone, that not just myself, but definitely got aspirations.
Yeah, I reckon they should give you and Wellesley a call up, slot you into the order.
Wellesley, definitely.
Yeah. And last question I got: what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
I think that we touched on it earlier. I think it's definitely just to one, if I probably wasn't working as hard as I should be at 20. Probably had other things on my mind at 20. Once you sign a contract for 2 or 3 years, you kind of feel that security and you can sort of slack a little bit. As a youngster, like I'm definitely not the only one. That I definitely didn't train hard enough or probably want it enough when I was 20, as opposed to when I do now, when I can sort of, I've played 50 first class games. I've played 25, 30 Big Bash games. I think I know what it takes now to perform consistently at that level, and trying to find a plan or a strategy to do that. I'd probably tell my 20-year-old self to probably stop drinking so much at one stage, going out. And then 2, I'd say try and knuckle down a game plan and give it a really good shot, a really good crack. And if it doesn't work, we can adjust the game plan. I think I had, I'd go into a season and I'd think I want to be this sort of player, and then I'd get 2 games in and be like, I can't do that, or people are telling me I can't do that, so I'd change. And we spoke about it earlier with Wade. He's only constantly trying to change his technique or, chase his ass, as he says, to try and fix something, and then it opens up another thing. So I think I'll just tell myself to try and nail down a plan of what sort of player you want to be or how you want to go about your game, and not just give it 2 or 3 games. Give it a proper 12-month crack. And if you don't think that that's going to be the path to success, then alter the plan. But you can't just sort of chop and change every week because you get out one way or because somebody tells you need to do something better. I think it's completely up to you. And that follows on to my next point. I suppose I'd say, don't let people sort of tell you what sort of career you want to have, or don't let people say you need to be a certain type of cricketer. It's completely up to you. And that's something I've probably learned more so in the 2 times I've come to Darwin, is that there's no one here to, get me out of bed and be at training at 9 o'clock, or there's no S&C telling me to run another 5K for the week. It's completely up to you. And I love that trust from the coaches back home. They know that I'm going to do the work up here by myself. And it's pretty simple. If you don't, you're going to get left behind, both physically and I suppose professionally. When you start playing cricket again, you're going to get left behind. So I really like the onus on doing that myself. So I'll definitely say, in one word, I'd say let yourself know what sort of cricketer you want to be and how you're going to get there, and don't let anyone try and tell you what you can and can't be. I think I've listened to a lot of people when I was younger, and for good or for bad. So at the end of the day, it's your career, and how you want to go about that is up to you.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. Thanks for sharing that. And where can people find you on the socials? And I've seen you've opened up a new gym. What is it?
That's Team Fit Training. Yeah, me and a couple of guys from down home have started a gym. They sort of came to me and said, "What do you think about this idea?" And I said, "Absolutely love it." It's we've got a bit of a hole in where we're from down in Kingborough there, where we've got a huge population and not many sort of team training things where anyone of any age can come in and get a workout in. The old typical walk into the gym and see 5, 6 big muscly blokes in there, and you might feel a bit intimidated about going to do your own workout or something. I think this is great for that, where it's really community orientated for one. We've got some great coaches on board in terms of personal trainers, and they've got some really good programs on how they can train people. So it's a group training facility called Team Fit. We're opening any day now. I think what's today, 13. We're not far from opening. I think they're just getting all the final testing done. It's been a bit of a journey for the lads, and it's I've been away from a lot of it, so it's going to be excellent when it opens, and I hope to grow it from there.
Yeah, it sounds good. I'll chuck all that in the show notes for people to find out. And just thanks for your time today. It's been awesome hearing the stories and how your career's gone, and looking forward to see success in the future.
Thanks very much for having me. Appreciate it. Cheers.